from Nevada Lithium. We've got Steve. The ticker on the CSE is NVLH. Steve, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you? Thanks so much for having me.
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining us. We've talked so much about gold and mining, and so I'm excited to kind of get into the lithium aspect of things with you here as well. But before we do that, give me a quick overview of what is it that your company does.
Nevada Lithium's is a junior exploration / development company that's working on our core asset. It's about 2.5 hours northwest of Las Vegas in the state of Nevada. And what we have on our hands is a beast of a project that we think is going to be one of the centerpieces of Nevada's growing lithium industry over time. We're a very small company. We just came to the market under 3 years ago, and nobody's ever heard of us. And one of the reasons that nobody has is because we've been, frankly, very busy getting the entire ownership of this project into one set of hands. That's what our concentration has been on. So our project is something that we think is going to take us through 2030 when we come into commercial production. A lot of different facets to talk about. So I'll leave it to you as how you would like to have me take you into this.
Yeah, and this is the Bonnie Claire project. Do I have that right?
That's correct, Bonnie Claire. Yeah. Right now, a massive footprint of a project over the size of essentially Manhattan Island, and something in which we have relatively few holes in. If you think about it, potentially somewhere, if you're familiar with Manhattan, think about Midtown, right around 42nd Street. We have a swath of holes right in there and a bunch of extra property that we need to go through. But it's not just an exploration story. We're actually advanced. We have our first swipe at economics, which is a preliminary economic assessment. That was done 2 years ago. And what it showed is that Bonnie Claire could give us a 32,000 ton a year lithium carbonate equivalent project with a 40-year mine life at very, very good economics, which at the point in time where we were using very low lithium prices. And obviously, we've all seen the roller coaster ride of lithium prices over the course of the past 9-12 months. But I would argue that lithium prices, they need to be much higher going forward to bring all of the lithium that's going to be needed by electric vehicles into the world's supplies, over the course of the next 5-6 years. So there's a lot of good stuff we already know about Bonnie Claire, but there's also a lot that we're looking to find out going forward.
So you kind of give us a little bit of insight on the status. I want to get a little bit more in depth about the timeline of this project and what investors and potential investors that are listening can expect.
So the ultimate timeline is to bring Bonnie Claire into production by 2030, 2031. And then working backwards, we have to get through feasibility study before that, pre-feasibility study. And we're in the midst, as I said, 2 years now past our original PEA. Now, where we are at specifically is a very interesting point in time, and that's because of some recent news that we released about 6 weeks ago. And that is that in our last couple of holes drilling, we confirmed the existence of a very high-grade swath of mineralization. It's orders of magnitude higher than our resource grade, which is already, frankly, our resource grade is called the number 3 in the world, the largest, with an overall grade is called 1,000 ppm, 0.1% of lithium. We've been finding massive blankets of much higher grade lithium, 2, 3, 4, 5,000 ppm for hundreds of meters or hundreds of feet, however you want to describe it, at depth. And it's open in 3 different directions. That's the kind of thing that we need to make sure we think about correctly, because we don't want to sterilize this property. We already have a massive resource. Now the question is how do we bring it into play to make our existing project even better? And that's one of the things that we're going to be doing over the course of the next couple of months going into the fall here at Bonnie Claire.
In your perspective now, right, because you've got the CEO hat on, you're also a former institutional investor. So with the lithium industry, what are some of the challenges that you see as we go with the growing supply of things?
I have never seen a mismatch in supply and demand in my 30 years of experience following commodities, commodity equities, anything like this. And what I tell people to try to bear in mind is that these systems are very complex systems. And you just take copper as an example. Traditionally, when you try to grow a commodity supply by more than GDP plus a couple of percent, things just start to break. The stress on the system is too much. It could be transportation, It could be not being able to hire people or whatever. what you're asking the lithium industry to develop over the course of the next 6 years, let's just say to 2030, is to go from about 500,000 tons a year last year, ballpark, to somewhere between 2 to 3 million by 2030. It all depends on the EV penetration rates, of course.
Yeah.
But those are compounded annual growth rates of 15, 20, 25%. And that kind of thing has never been done. Now, when your base is low at the very beginning, we're just starting out, sure, producers can bring on brownfields, et cetera, but you also see that's a double-edged sword, because when prices start to go lower, they quickly retract those expansion plans and you're back to where you were. So as long as there's a mismatch between supply and demand, and in my opinion, there's going to continue to be that mismatch, it's going to make lithium prices bubble up. It's going to give us all a very, very good tailwind going forward. And that increases the value of projects like Bonnie Claire. We have tremendous sensitivity to rising lithium prices. At $13,000 lithium prices, we have a $1.5 billion NPV. At $30,000 lithium prices, we got a $4 or $5 billion NPV. So that's the kind of thing as an investor I always looked for. And as I said, I have never seen such a mismatch in supply and demand during the course of my career.
I want people to understand the correlation that you mentioned. So for the folks at home that may not know, NPV, when you're making that comparison, what exactly does that stand for and what does that mean?
Okay, so NPV it's one of those concepts that you don't really come across in everyday life. But you're looking at a way to say, hey, if I have cash flows out in the distant future, how do I value them? And basically you make some assumptions and you bring them back, you discount them, and you say, okay, I've made $100 going forward. It's going to cost me $50 to build the mine. So I net all that out and I have $50 left. That's my NPV. Now, those future cash flows can get much, much bigger if you say, well, you know what, for every pound of dirt I'm bringing out of Bonnie Claire, instead of getting $1, I'm getting $1.30. And that's the leverage that I'm talking about. That's the leverage to rising lithium prices that I think is really going to make people's eyes pop when they see basically maybe an updated PEA, a PFS, and ultimately our feasibility study from Bonnie Claire.
Yeah, that's what I wanted folks to take away is when you're mentioning the rise of lithium prices and how it correlates to a positive impact on your business, they can understand what exactly that translates and what that means in terms of dollars. What would you describe as like your value proposition to investors?
So here we are. Typically, you look at the value of a company as its market capitalization, right? So shares times price. And we're sitting here, $30, $35 million Canadian, $20, $25 million US, however you want to look at it. And we have 100% control of one of the largest lithium resources in the world. And nobody knows about us because we haven't been able to market. We've been concentrating on get 100% ownership. That's the mismatch that if you look forward over to 2030, we would expect that the value of this company should basically rise to get the net present value. And I don't think it's $1.5 billion because I don't think that $13,400 lithium is a long-term lithium price. I think it's much higher. So when you look about this, the reason that we all get involved with junior resource stocks is for this kind of potential return. We're not investing for S&P and 500 returns in this kind of environment. Here you've got obviously, you've got a great project in the best mining jurisdiction in the world, and you can get in at very, very low levels here because nobody knows about us.
Yeah, you got to find those hidden gems and needle in the haystacks that, with the prices and the timeline that you've laid out with Bonnie Claire project looks exciting. What else is there that you'd like for our viewers to hear about, right? We talked about so many different things in terms of the timeline of the Bonnie Claire project, what the value of it is, the growing supply, the challenges you might face there. Any other topics that you wanted to discuss that I didn't bring up?
I would just say one of the things that I'd like people to really watch is how we start to address our most recent drilling results. We have a massive project here. Probably many of your viewers understand lower grade gold with high tonnages, Carlin type of gold versus high grade vein structures, that kind of stuff. The analog is sort of simpler, the same here, with lithium. But our last round of drilling, our last couple of holes, have shown us that we have this massive open blanket of increasing at depth and increasing in intercept length of increasing grades. And the way that could actually turn Bonnie Claire into, frankly, more of a beast, because she's already a beast, is something that I think is going to be, frankly, very, very astonishing to investors. And those who don't know about us now, I think there's not going to be any alternative. You will hear about us because of the potential coming out of this incredible project. We just have a tremendous amount of optionality in terms of brine, other things at surface. When you have a footprint this big, there's a lot of things that you can do. And we pride ourselves on thinking outside of the box. This is a U.S. project. I'm a U.S. CEO. That's not incredibly, the way things normally are with junior resource companies. Ultimately, we think this is destined to go on to the major U.S. exchanges at the proper time. This thing has got all of the attributes the big mining companies, energy companies, car companies want to see. And we're going to develop it as responsibly and quickly as we can.
You got to make sure you do it right and not just quick. Steve, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
I appreciate the time. Thanks so much for the opportunity.